If you've paid really any attention at all to popular film discourse over the last 10 years, you know that there's been a lot of talk about LGBTQ representation. But I think if an alien came to Earth and all they knew about humanity was from mainstream Hollywood, they'd be shocked for the most part to learn that gay people existed before the 80s or 90s. Obviously, queer people have had a home in independent cinema for years. People like Todd Haynes and John Waters frontlining queer stories for decades before it was mainstream, but Hollywood has been a lot less generous. We'll get to that. But there's one great gay blip deep in the annals of American cinema. A mainstream Hollywood film, subtly or loudly queer, starring Hollywood legends that blew up the Hays Code? Yes, please. Today, we're talking about Some Like It Hot.
Running wild.
Some context. For the first 40 years of American cinema, film was completely lawless. Or at least its contents weren't regulated. Take The Kiss, 1896, one of the first films ever publicly released. It's about 15 seconds long and features two actors recreating a scene from a play that they were in where they, well, kiss. One real human critic said the following: "The spectacle of the prolonged pasturing on each other's lips was beastly enough in life size on the stage, but magnified to gargantuan proportions and repeated 3 times over, it is absolutely disgusting." As Hollywood grew and took up a larger part of the public consciousness, it became plagued by scandal. For example, a major star, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, allegedly raped Virginia Rapp. And although he was acquitted in trial, it caused the public to lose trust in Hollywood institutions. Faced with increasing public scrutiny, the studios decided to regulate themselves to avoid having to deal with government interference. The gist of it is that Hollywood films were restricted from displaying morally objectionable things on screen, relayed in the form of a list of don'ts and be carefuls. What was on the list? Here are some highlights. Pointed profanity, suggestive nudity, white slavery or forced prostitution, interracial romance or sexual behavior, STDs, scenes of childbirth, child nudity, ridicule of the clergy, taking the Lord's name in vain, hell, sob, damn, God, and every other vulgar expression, willful offense to any nation, race, or creed, and be careful with torture, arson, religion, the flag, men and women in bed together, first night scenes, hubba hubba, marriage, and lustful kissing. But there's one that's particularly vague: sexual perversion. It's important to know that this was understood at the time to clearly encompass homosexuality. And so, for the better part of 40 years, from 1934 to 1968, practically all American films were produced under these terms. Eventually, studios pushed back in the 50s. Films like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and Psycho were given certificates of approval by the MPAA after addressing notes to make them more palatable. But there's one film that didn't get certified at all because it was so transgressive to the bottled up Hays Code's version of morality that it simply could not be made to fit its mold. Some Like It Hot concerns two musicians who, on the run from gangsters, cross-dress to join an all-female band leaving town.
Let's talk this thing over, Joe. Why couldn't we do it, huh? Last year, when we worked in the Gypsy Tea Room, we wore gold earrings, didn't we? Remember when you booked us with the Hawaiian band? We wore grass skirts.
In the process, they get caught up with the band's singer, Sugar Kane, played by Marylin Monroe. Slapstick shenanigans ensue. Joe takes up a third personality to woo Sugar, while Jerry's Daphne persona becomes more and more fundamental. For a film released in 1959, its queerness, expressed through its cross-dressing content, is shocking. Take this moment where Jerry, as Daphne, rebukes the advances of an older man.
What kind of a girl do you think I am, Mr. Fielding? Dirty old man.
What happened?
I just got pinched in the elevator.
Now you know how the other half lives.
Look at that, I'm not even pretty.
His reaction isn't as a man disgusted by the accidental homosexual attention. It's the way a woman in a film from the 1950s would react, and it's played a little tongue-in-cheek, both very natural for Jerry to react like that and a little ironic. Take this moment after he just returned from a date with the same rich old man.
Hi, Jerry. Everything under control?
Have I got things to tell you?
What happened?
I'm engaged.
Congratulations. Who's the lucky girl?
I am.
Here, Jerry has fully realized his role as Daphne. He's not simply acting like the saxophone player in an all-female band, being courted by a rich patron. He is that. At the same time, living his life as a man and her life as a woman. Subtextually, it's not just gender non-confirmation. It's beyond a transgender identity within the gender binary. Jerry here is a proto-gender fluid protagonist. Eventually, Jerry rejects marriage to Osgood, not out of disgust, but for practical reasons regarding their escape from the gangsters. And he's disappointed to do so.
Telling yourself you're a boy. You're a boy.
I'm a boy.
That's the boy.
Oh, I'm a boy. I'm a boy. I wish I were dead. I'm a boy. I'm a boy. Oh, boy, am I a boy. Now what am I going to do about my engagement present?
Joe's story is a little different. After meeting Marylin Monroe's Sugar Cane, he invents a third personality, that of Shell Oil heir, Shell Oil Jr., to ply her with wine and drinks stolen from Osgood's yacht. The climax of the film involves a great escape from the gangsters that drove them away from Chicago in the first place. Before the pair get away, Sugar realizes that Josephine and Shell Oil Jr. are one and the same, and she rushes to join them. Despite Joe's frankly problematic schemes, she accepts him as the lowly musician he is, mirroring Osgood's acceptance of Jerry. The innate queer themes, the two main characters wildly gender-bending, pretending to be women, two men getting engaged, blatant sexuality, the cross-dressing, but especially the fact that the film was a box office hit in spite of those things, or because of them, are credited with helping take power from the Hays Code, which was repealed less than 10 years later. In 2022, Some Like It Hot was adapted into a Broadway musical. They changed some plot points and make Jerry's dual identity as Daphne more explicit, but really it works to highlight themes that already existed in Some Like It Hot. In the film, Jerry never rebukes his life as a man to live it as a woman, but grows to appreciate a sort of dual role. Similarly, in the musical, Jerry finds self-acceptance living fully as Jerry and fully as Daphne. There's another classic man in women's clothes comedy film that got adapted to a musical in the last couple years, Mrs. Doubtfire. The casual modern observer will know that there's some scenes that are tricky to adapt to modern sensibilities. The son, Chris, walks in on his father as Mrs. Doubtfire and, not realizing that it's his father, freaks out. His father, obviously, is pretending to be someone else, but his intruder status is because he's a man dressed as a woman, which is presumed by the film to mean that he has some sort of nefarious purpose. It's not that he has male genitalia, it's because it's attached to, ostensibly, a woman's body. Obviously, if Robin Williams' character had dressed up as an old British man, no shock would be registered that he had male genitalia. His son Chris isn't just expressing disgust over what is ostensibly a transgender person's body. His reaction almost suggests trans people themselves are inherently dangerous. It prefigures modern conservative fear-mongering surrounding trans women in women's bathrooms. In the musical, this plays out a little differently. Instead of seeing his father peeing on accident, he sees him without the mask, but it's still sort of an uncomfortable reminder of the original scene. Another famous example of this sort of pathologizing of transgenderness in comedy films is Ace Ventura.
She's not Louis Einhorn. She's Ray Finkel. She's a man.
He's lying. Shut up!
Whose climax revolves around outing a transgender woman who still has male genitalia, and dozens of men vomit in reaction. Some Like It Hot has survived a lot of the modern, inclusive reappraisal a lot of films have gone through. Mrs. Doubtfire, by no stretch of the imagination, has not. The older Some Like It Hot doesn't rely on the audience to find trans people explicitly gross to follow along. For Mrs. Doubtfire, it's practically a prerequisite to understand the shock and relief of the son. The characters in Some Like It Hot are radically accepting.
But you don't understand, Osgood. I'm a man.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Jerry and Joe adopt female personas as easily as they would adopt another man's. Cross-dressing duo don't have to do any of the very involved things that some characters do to pass as women. They don't procure complicated prosthetics or undergo surgery. All it takes is a wig, bad makeup, and gaudy clothes. Presenting as a woman is enough for others to see them as women in the world of this film. In that way, the film is less about men pretending to be women and more like people pretending to be other people. Less in the vein of Mrs. Doubtfire and more like Catch Me If You Can. And ultimately, this is what saves it from the issues apparent in other men in women's clothes films. Some Like It Hot, as Roger Ebert puts it, is one of the enduring treasures of the movies, a film of inspiration and meticulous craft. Its survival is owed to the fact that it's just a great movie. It's a great comedy film, but it also has an anachronistic sense to it. It can be read as a transgressively gay and non-binary comedy that challenges traditional notions of sexuality and gender. The film embodies a deeply felt acceptance that's felt more the longer modern culture wars about transgender people drag on. The film doesn't use any of the politically correct terminology we use now. It would have fallen on an audience that failed to understand terms like non-binary or gender non-conforming. Instead, it's brashly matter-of-fact about the lives of its characters. Its ignorance is, in this rare circumstance, a virtue. To me, the enduring question that Some Like It Hot raises is this. If modern audiences could handle gender-bending, cross-dressing shenanigans in 1959, then why has it taken so long for the rest of Hollywood to catch up?